terrific turnout, and you're really in for a treat. We've got a great panel here today to talk about the future, and with that, I'd like to I'll introduce our panel and ask them to come up. First, we have Bill Koenigsberg, the founder and CEO of Horizon Media. Give Bill a round of applause. Yeah, you just go there, and I'll use this one. Next, Steve Farella, the CEO and founder of Targetcast TCM, one of the really terrific entrepreneurs in the media business and the media services sector. A round of applause for Steve. And then David Payne, the CEO of Kinetic in the Americas. Kinetic, I think, can be referred to as the largest single point buyer of out-of-home in the in the world, actually. So welcome David Payne to our panel. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to, well, some of you have seen me moderate panels before, and I try to keep them both solid in terms of information transfer, but also to have a little bit of fun. We'll do something I've done. Typically, we'll do a lightning round today, a couple of them, where I'll ask each of the panelists quick questions with one word or one sentence answers, so you can get a little bit of a sense of the folks behind the panel. And we'll also try to take some questions from the audience. What I'd love you to do, if you have a question that you'd like me to ask, grab there's some paper in front of you, and I think what would be best is just hold up your hand, and if you have a question you'd like to ask, and write on a piece of paper, and someone from the staff will bring it to me, and we'll see if we can get some questions from the audience. So if you have a question you'd like me to ask, write on a piece of paper, raise your hand, and send it up, and I'll see if we can get it to the panel. Let's start a little bit with a little bit of background on each of these companies. I'll start with you, Bill. Why don't you start and give folks just a little bit of background on Horizon, but in particular, talk about how you manage out-of-home media, and particularly place-based digital out-of-home. How does it fit within the Horizon operating structure?
Thanks, David. Great question to start off with. You know, it all starts with, and you know, I heard Nancy talk about being siloed, but it all starts with the keeper of the brand at the agency. That's the beginning. Who is the brand strategist? And we have leads in our business. And within that brand strategy team is also an activation specialist who doesn't negotiate and doesn't buy, but is responsible for understanding all the touch points out there. And we also have within our brand team digital specialists. And today they're called digital strategists within the brand teams. As years go on, they will just be called strategists because everything that we're doing is digital. Now, in terms of, you know, at a home and who negotiates that, we have activation teams, but the keeper of that strategy, whether digital channels become part of that strategy, all starts with the brand teams. And that's who sellers need to get into to talk to, because by the time it gets to the activation people, it's a little bit too late.
David, let's go to you next. I'll move the questions around, but I think in this question, as we establish a little bit about each of your organizations, each of you were chosen to be on this panel because in a way, each of you represent a different kind of segment of the industry. Now, David, you represent really the aggregation of an enormous amount of out-of-home volume. How do you approach, tell the audience a little bit about Kinetic, and also how do you manage digital place-based video within the Kinetic structure?
Sure. I mean, I think the very essence of Kinetic when we were founded 6 years ago was to take a very different view of the sector and of the marketplace. We certainly operate within the out-of-home market environment, but we take a much broader view of what actually out-of-home is. And we talk a lot about the human channel in Kinetic and lifestyle and environment media. And actually, the way that we operate is to, view the industry not only as traditional out-of-home, place-based digital, mobile, and social media. So we're beginning to take a much broader view of actually this is a specialism rather than just a segment within the industry. And we're building up our business and our practice to actually reflect that. We obviously operate with clients in two very different ways. We're in a position where we work on behalf of a number of agency partners. which leads to a very different operation in terms of client interface. But we're also building up quite a significant portfolio of direct clients, and that's where we see growth for our business as a specialism. So the dynamic is very different depending on how you approach clients.
Understood. And now, Steve, you know, you've built such an incredible business with Targetcast TCM. You're really one of the, you and Bill are two unbelievable entrepreneurs in the media services business. Talk about how do you approach out of home generally, but digital place-based advertising. How does that fit into the Targetcast TCM operating structure?
You're going to hear that I really just want to be like Bill. That's why I've got my own shop, like Bill has his own shop. But we also believe in answering this question in creating the shortest distance between strategy and implementation. Okay, so with digital place-based media, we have always, and we intend to keep that very close to brand strategy. So the keepers of that for us are the strategy teams, the planning teams, we call them media strategists. And that's where all the digital place-based media gets done. And we do believe in it. We use it. We like to use it in the travel business a lot. So that's where we do it.
So let's get, I think, to one of the biggest challenges that this audience faces. You know, we have a number of people in the audience, guys, that own or manage or sell digital place-based advertising products. And I think it's fair to say that one of the biggest frustrations of the people in this room is the way they call on an agency and seem to get moved around, right? You bring a digital place-based advertising opportunity to an agency like any of your three, and there's some frustration in this room where somebody says, do I go see the out-of-home guy, the out-of-home specialist, or do I go see the network TV guy, the national TV guy? I like seeing the national TV guy because that's where all the money is. Or do I go see the digital specialist? A bunch of your agencies still have very, we can use different terms, but they have folks that are really focused in online or interactive advertising that also maybe understand this media type better. So the problem I think a lot of people in this audience face is that they go see the network guy at one of your places, and he tells them to go see the out-of-home guy. Then they go see the out-of-home guy, and he tells them to go see the digital guy. And then the digital guy tells them to go back and see the network guy. And it's just a spin cycle of calling on agencies, and you get frustrated. And the alternative then is to go see the client direct. So let's start with you, Bill. I know you know that frustration. Talk to these folks about how do they call on Horizon or other agencies as big as yours. You're almost a $4 billion enterprise these days. How do you deal with that?
Well, it actually isn't very complicated, and I tell this to salespeople all the time. First of all, there are multiple touch points. There are. That's a fact of life. That's not going to change. But you've got to get to the brand strategists, the people who are managing the connections planning process. You have to do that. You also obviously have to talk to the activation people, but we welcome any new media, any old media to come in and make presentations to our brand teams. And I have gotten together a significant amount of our brand strategists, and we have a lot of them, for presentation days where media sellers come in and meet with these brand teams. It's our responsibility, our brand lead's responsibility to know what's going on in the marketplace, not to leave it up to the activation people. You also have to go to the activation people. It's one of the reasons why we set up this brand activation lead within our brand teams. He's a knowledge center for all of this information. So those are the people you have to get to. If you get to the activation people, you're getting on the train way, way, way too late.
David, let's go to you. I mean, yes, you're a company that has an enormous stake and enormous volume in out-of-home. We could argue, particularly in traditional out-of-home. I mean, heck, why not go see for a lot of the people in this audience that have digital out-of-home networks that are pretty capable with pretty robust capabilities, why shouldn't they go see Reno Scanzoni over at the National TV Group? He's the guy with all the money. Why come see you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would start with agreeing with Bill that ultimately you have to get to the media strategist and to the client. We're big advocates of spending time with the media strategist and the client, but that's much easier said than done. I mean, there's never a perfect world. Media strategists have a huge amount on their plate. And you know, whilst they are, I'm sure, charged in most agencies with understanding all the nuances and all the industry developments across a wide proliferation of media, that's not always easy. So it is a challenge. We view it, as I said earlier on, you know, the entire environment as a specialism, but within our specialism, we're building, you know, a specific specialism for place-based digital. But you know, for us, it's the value of the real estate as well as the broadcast element, and I think that's a very important asset that the place-based digital environment has. And just because, you know, you could talk about media convergence with, you know, the screen becoming omnipresent, but actually just because it's a screen, it doesn't necessarily have the same engagement attributes and the same you know, opportunity for engagement with the client that a TV or a tablet or a mobile has. So, you know, it's for that reason that you need to view it as a specialism, whether it's a specialism in an agency separate from the out-of-home market, or a specialism within an out-of-home environment. But I don't think it's a broadcast channel.
Steve, how do you manage it, and what advice can you give for these salespeople in this audience today about just all they want to do is pitch? They just want to get to the right person and tell their story. How do they do it at your place?
I'm gonna open up the door a little bit. Not answer how we do it at our place, because how we do it at our place is through the strategy teams. But I'm gonna open up the door for implementation. So what I would say is it depends on what you're selling. Now, in most instances, you are selling a strategy. You know, here's a pharma account. Boy, I'm in doctor's offices. Isn't that a great idea? Don't you want to add that to your strategy? That really gets done at the strategy teams. But I've seen some digital place-based networks that, man, they look like and they act like, in fact, they even take 30-second, 15-second spots. So if you're going to look and act like a TV network and you've got the reach of a cable network, you can try to sell that in some of the broadcast groups, you know. But just know what you're selling. If you're selling strategy, you're in with the strategy teams. If you're selling implementation, don't buy CNN, but buy the airport channel. Then you might have a better shot. On the buying side. I don't see it sit in the digital groups. I really don't see that. I think that's kind of a little bit of a red herring. I mean, you might be able to get some sales that way, but because it's digital, where the digital people, it just doesn't fit that way. That's not how they think. They're looking for more interaction. They're looking for a lot more data than we usually get, on this side of the fence.
You know, David, let me just add to that. I think that, you know, and I'm going to stretch the boundaries a little bit here. I think the model at some of my holding company competitors, and David, not putting a knock at you, it's broken. It's still very siloed, still very hard to navigate that landscape. You talked about that, you know, and you know, I heard Nancy talk earlier on her speech about collaboration, and you have to build a company of the future where the left hand is talking to the right hand. I'm very proud of our activation people. They're really smart, and I'm not suggesting that you don't now go and see them. I think they're really good, and they're really good at communicating with our brand teams about new ideas that are out there. You know, we've got a very open access environment at the company. So for good salespeople with good ideas, with new platforms that can move our clients' business, bust our doors down. And I'll be the first one to tell you, if you're not having that access, email me directly and you'll get that access, because it's our responsibility to give it to you. But I know from people that have come on board to our agency and clients that new clients that have come on board, those silos still exist. And if those silos don't change, some of these companies are going to become dinosaurs. They have to change.
Can I just add? I mean,
Sure, please.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And actually, in defence of my holding company, we have specifically been removed from the Group M entity because, you know, the space that we represent.
So Kinetic is no longer attached to Group M.
Absolutely. I mean, we're still very much affiliated, and we work with the Group M businesses and with the range of Group M clients. But if the, you know, as we call it, the lifestyle and environment sector was to remain as an entity within it, given its scale in the marketplace as it is here, we are not going to get the leverage that we need as a business to invest in the way that we approach the marketplace, develop this much broader vision of the environment, the out-of-home environment. So we recognise that, and the approach that we're taking to avoid that silo approach is, you know, we work alongside our Group M partners, but we address the clients as equals now. So I mean, it's a long, slow process, but we're very much engaged on that.
We'll go back. I think this question of how do you with so much volume in the advertising business centered in the media services agencies, this question of who to call on and where to access your clients is one that we're going to come back to a couple of times. I think it's one of the central questions in our audience today, and one of the central issues. But let's move to a couple of other places, and then see, we may take a question or two from the audience. But let's move next to the creative implications of digital place-based advertising. We have an interesting challenge, right, with particularly in video media today. Mm-hmm. We've got a unit length on television, which is 30 seconds, and a construct of people sitting, about 11 to 14 feet away from a television screen. We've got an internet video delivery system, which is moving more and more towards, 10-second lengths. Then we've got place-based, which seem to be moving into 10 and 15-second lengths. I mean, how do you manage this? Where do you get how often is the lack of creative really being used as an excuse for the folks in this audience not to be able to get an order from one of your three agencies? Because a 30-second ad doesn't seem to work as effectively, or the ad that was designed for television may not be appropriate for digital place-based. Why don't you start with you, David? Let's talk about the creative applications of digital place-based advertising. What's the right creative, in your opinion, that's supposed to run on a digital place-based network? Is it the same ad that's running on a national television spot on CNN?
I mean, it comes down to environment, doesn't it? I mean, it's very much, depending on where you're sitting. Obviously, if you're in a New York City cab, then, you can work with broadcast creative content. But if you're in a more discrete environment, then you need to develop content that's more relevant perhaps to the environment and to the audience. I think going back to the point of how do you address the sales, I think there is a big job to be done, and one of the things that we're investing in is a sales role into the agencies. There's a huge, into the creative environment and into the creative agencies. So that's an area that needs to be addressed. I don't think it's a particular barrier. Again, if you get the right idea through a kind of consultative selling process, and that you're actually building up a proposition to an advertiser that's of value, and it gets traction with the media strategists and with the client direct, then you're going to make the creative work. But you still have to talk as an industry about the nuances of each individual media channel, and perhaps that's a role that the DPAA can play in terms of upselling the creative opportunity in the future.
Steve, you have Hotels.com, right? Yeah. As a big client for Targetcast TCM. What creative do you use for a place-based digital network?
Okay, so I've got two very strong thoughts. Two strong thoughts? I don't know if that is. On this subject. The first is, what really attracts us to this business is the environment, right? So we want to get creative that is made for that environment. So if it's travel and it's going to be in an airport, don't give me the same ad that we're seeing on TV. It's not going to work. Let's take advantage of it. If it's healthcare and it's in a doctor's office, we need something special. So there is a little bit of a creative climb here. The second thing is that if we try to buy multiple networks like we usually do, we might be looking at different formats or different things. We might have audio and video in one environment. We might have no audio in another environment, which puts more pressure on the video. We might have flash in a third environment, and it's not video at all. So I think that these are the kind of things that, as your business begins to kind of come together, that I bet they all kind of work themselves out. At least a lot of them begin to work themselves out. But those are, I wouldn't call it a barrier to buying, okay? They're not a huge barrier to buying, but clearly, I'm going to call it this. They are a barrier to success, okay? Because the easiest thing for us to do and for the creative agency to do is take that ad that's on TV, cut it down, pull the audio out, and put it in that environment, check the box, and keep moving. That will not be enormously successful. Okay, we really do need creative that understands where it's going.
Now, Bill, you think about your business, right? Now, you have at Horizon two of the most omnipresent campaigns in America, Geico and Capital One, right? Just won the Capital One business this past year. Yep. I mean, you're a monster, right? I mean, when it comes to...
A nice monster, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're huge. I mean, but when you talk about, creative, I mean, you got the get-go. You have some of the most iconic creative in the marketplace today. half the people in this audience would love to get that gecko on a place-based network. And you have a partnership with an agency that produces a lot of creative, right? Geico's got at times 3 different campaigns on the air at a given time, and then finally Geico's a huge user of out of home. So talk about the creative challenges here. Do you use your internet advertising creative, your out-of-home creative, your TV creative, or do you just send these guys into a spin cycle and it ends up with they don't get the business?
That's a big question. Let me answer it a couple of different ways. First of all, we are at the cusp of a new creative revolution. All of these new platforms have opened up enormous opportunity to engage with consumers. Media is the new creative, creative is the new media. And you go back, Dave, to Geico and where all that starts. Media agencies, at least media agencies like ours, are now informing the creative process in a much more robust way. And that is all started with consumer insights and behavioral insights. When you take the Gecko was all about making Geico a likable company. And that came from a lot of consumer research in terms of, you never thought that someone in the market for car insurance really cared much about whether or not they really liked the brand and they felt the brand was fun and friendly. Well, they did. And that's where all of these characters started to be developed from. And then, based how consumers consume different types of media, from mobile to different types of social to digital to place-based, creative is developed specifically for that environment. And we don't want to get creative for the sake of just being fun. We want to get creative to move product and move brand metrics. So anybody who comes in with a concept, we have to prove it out. And more media companies out there are coming to us with custom research studies to prove that what we're doing is working. And take Hulu, for example. We started out 2 years ago like this with Hulu. They've come back to us with some significant metrics that are telling a very strong story, and now they're getting a greater share. We're doing an enormous amount of testing with mobile that seems to be getting results. So it's a return on investment, and it's custom creative for that environment.
Got it. By the way, if you have questions, I see we've got a couple. Raise your hand if you have a question, and someone from the audience will, from the staff will bring them forward. Let's move to a lightning round or two. Let's learn a little bit about the three of you and about your lives on the buying and agency side. Let's start with you, David. How many emails do you get a day?
Probably about 100.
100. Mr. Farella, how many emails do you get a day?
100, but I don't get any of the CCs. I pocket them. I'll see them once in a while.
And Bill, how many emails do you get a day?
Man, you guys don't work anywhere near as hard as I do. I probably get about 400 a day.
400 emails a day.
He always has to win.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you. But I'm an engaged CEO. I welcome interaction.
And you open up 400 emails a day?
Yeah, I do.
Steve, you open up 100 emails a day?
I open up my twos.
Your twos. David?
I don't know. I don't open them all in the same day, so I will selectively.
Okay, next.
I'm sending my CCs to
Koenigsberg.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bill, how many telephone calls you get a day?
Actually, not many. Most of that comes through email. I probably get a dozen a day. Not many.
Yeah,
Steve, how many phone calls?
Not many.
Not many.
Okay, and then face-to-face sales presentations. You three, let's start with you, David. You see sales guys during the day?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, probably at least one a day.
One a day. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'd say one a day. Not much.
Bill?
On occasion. I try to, I'm a bottleneck. When a sales guy comes in to see me, I am very open to try to hear what they have to say, and then I get lost reading my emails. Right. And I become a bottleneck in terms of getting you to the right people. So I try to get them to the brand people.
So you're an air traffic controller.
Yeah, but if someone has a great innovative new idea that's breakthrough, bust my door down.
That's
Come to me.
All right, let's just do a couple of other things. David, what's the last book you read?
Oh my God.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Steve, last book you read?
Same book.
Bill, what's the last book you read?
Too Big to Fail.
Ah, Too Big to Fail.
You know what? I got halfway through that, and half of those companies went out of business. I said, you're crazy. Did you think about that?
Yep.
David, I'll come back to you. Last book you read?
Not a good book.
I've gone blank, sorry.
No problem. Let's go back to you. One other question. Let's start with you, Bill. How would you describe your current state of mind? What's your current state of mind?
I'm ecstatic because the industry is going through so much change, and there's so much opportunity out there. There are, I've said this before, we're in a world of positive chaos, which is not a negative thing, it's a really good thing. And there is so much opportunity, so much innovation, so many new ways to go to market. The old is a dinosaur. Yeah, everybody has to reinvent themselves, and I feel that we're doing it every day. So I'm pretty euphoric about what's going on in the marketplace right now.
David, how would you describe your state of mind?
Yeah, I'm very positive at the moment. I think, notwithstanding the economic climate, I think that, just testament to this business is the number of people that are here today. When you think about how this meeting started off a few years ago, I think, it recognises that the industry that we represent in, the out-of-home or place-based digital environment that we represent is on the cusp of quite significant change with some very different ways of engaging with the consumer. That the industry hasn't been able to deliver before, so I'm very positive, yeah.
And Steve, how would you describe your state of mind?
Okay, I would say one word with a hyphen, hyperactive. I love to keep things moving. So, it could be, it is our client's business, it is our agency's business, and my personal business. I love keeping things moving.
Now, there's just one comment from the audience, which I should pass along.
Is it a book
Bill, you got a comment here. I won't say from who, but someone is saying, Bill, really nice power tie. Is it new?
No, it's actually a couple of years old, not new. If you've got a really cool, innovative, first-to-market idea for me, I'll give you the tie.
Let's move to this is a question from the audience. How do we get to a place where impressions are measured differently depending on the media platform? This is a complicated question, but one that I'd love to start with you, David, on. Isn't a commercial-free doctor's office environment inherently more valuable than driving by a billboard at 70 miles per hour? So is every impression at Kinetic the same?
Thanks for putting that one to me straight away. That's a great question and almost impossible to answer, I think, just covering my backside.
We can go back to the book if you want.
Yeah, I'm still thinking that one through. Yeah. I think from our perspective, no, every impression can't be the same. You have to view the various different segments of the channel that we represent in a different way, and obviously it all comes back down to the advertiser and the consumer that you're trying to reach. It would be an impossible task, I think, to aggregate the audience in one homogenous audience delivery system. The industry, if you look at the outdoor side of the industry, it's only until this year that it's actually been able to deliver a significant development in terms of measuring the roadside out-of-home environment in an up-to-date way. The same challenge prevails for the PlayStation digital environment, and within that there are different environments and different channels. So I think you'll find that we will view some place-based digital opportunities alongside traditional out-of-home, and we'll find specialist niche environments where you have to be more narrowcast on the objective of the advertiser. It's a very, very difficult challenge, and you might be able to crack it with one fell solution, but the numbers involved in terms of cost and investment would be dramatic, and I don't see the vested interests in the industry on the two sides of the fence being able to work together to deliver that, if I'm completely honest.
Any comment, Steve or Bill, about here's a pretty important issue, right? We have impressions that are generated from television, we have impressions that are delivered from a mobile app, and we have impressions that could be delivered from a digital place-based media network. Are they the same, and do you measure them the same? And if we don't have some kind of common impression delivery, will this medium ever get the due that it deserves? Steve?
Okay, so I'll make it short. Look, I think that we on the buy side are going to be living in a world where impressions are going to come in different flavors, like it or not, okay? Generally, we're looking at demographic impressions, but now with the internet, we're really not, right? In a lot of instances, we're looking at behaviorally targeted impressions. We really can't take that and get it back to a women 25 to 54 number. And the same could be said about digital place-based media. Once again, the stronger the environment is, the more likely that impression is worth more to that brand. So it's tough to mathematically put them together, and that's why we think, the best sale is back at the strategy, in the strategy groups, or at least with the strategy head on.
Let me just answer that a couple of different. First of all, hopefully everybody's aware of the big industry initiative with the 4As, ANA, and the IAB about consistent media measurement across all platforms. We're out in beta test now, very soon, on that platform, so we will have common language and a common currency. That doesn't mean that all impressions are created equal. We have a value impression index that we use that talks about lots of different criteria within the environment that impression is exposed in. So no, they're not all created equal. We also have a tool which is a channel relevance index that talks about the relevance of the channel and the importance of the channel when a consumer is in the process of making a decision to buy that product. So you may have a high usage media channel that is not relevant, it means they use it a lot, but it's kind of like wallpaper to them, versus another channel that might not be as high usage, but it's extremely relevant to them when they are shopping for a particular product. And a lot of the long tail media, which is not high usage, is actually starting to come very high on the high relevance quadrant when people are in the market for particular products. So no, they're not all created equal, and you have to have tools to help guide you to make those decisions.
Yeah. And I would just on a sort of related theme, not directly related to measurement, but in an area that's of great opportunity, I think, for us as an industry, is obviously the crossover where mobile bridges out of home, and I think we're beginning to explore the opportunity for outcome-based measurement and modelling for our advertisers, and then exploring how we can actually generate campaigns and predicting the outcome based on, if you look at the way that you can use mobile data and connectivity particularly through the place-based digital channel to actually generate responses, and that's an opportunity for the industry that we've really only just begun to explore, I think.
Yeah, that takes us, David. We had a question about second from the bottom. To what degree are you integrating mobile and social media into your digital place-based media buys and campaigns? Let's think about that. In the audience today, we have I think there's a network here today, Aku, right, which is trying to build a series of screens in the food courts of shopping malls, right? And you can interact with those screens. A lot of it, I understand, I believe with Aku is music videos, and you can use your mobile device, your phone, to be able to communicate with the screen and perhaps use it to select what the next video will be up on the screen. Talk about that for a second. Doesn't that make a situation that's already even more complicated, incredibly complicated? Now all of a sudden we've got a mobile platform connected to a digital place-based platform, and now who do you call on now? And talk a little bit about how social media and mobile media get connected to digital place-based advertising.
I think it's, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a great opportunity. I think, we'll just give you an example. We've run a test in a mall environment with a quick serve restaurant, whereby the particular challenge was, the challenge that came back to us from the client was, we know that I think something like 40% of our customers work in the mall. And we took the opportunity, recognizing that these screens run, from not just when the mall opens, they run when the staff are arriving before the mall opens. So we actually did a deal with a couple of vendors just in one mall in Long Island, where we took a performance model, and we actually took inventory that was before the mall opened, targeting the staff before that, as they were arriving in, and actually had mobile connectivity with the ads, and actually then that generated a couponing opportunity to go back to the quick serve restaurant and generate a sale, and we were actually able to measure the results. So, it's very small scale for us, and we're now scaling that out into a number of other malls with the same advertiser, and I think that for us is a real opportunity for the industry about how we can develop it. So I see it as a challenge. And it's a challenge on both sides. How do we persuade our media owner partners to engage with us on that? Because how do you, there's a cost issue here. How do you generate the media to generate the outcome? But if we can tackle that together, I think it's a great opportunity.
Can I get comments from Bill and Steve a little bit? Because it's so hot these days, particularly, social. Everyone's talking about social media. I'm not sure we're we're doing a lot more talking than we are advertising, I think, and then there's particularly mobile, and how is mobile connecting to both. In general, how are your agencies handling mobile, and specifically, how about mobile and digital place-based? What about the connectivity between those two?
So, I've commented on this before. We're in a mobile and social world. Brands are being developed today based on their social currency. Clients are going to have social marketing people within their groups. Many of them have them now. Everything is going to travel with social currency. So everything that we are looking at today, we've heard about 20 people in our social group, everything that we're looking at today has to do with how can you multiply the touch points through the use of mobile and social media. We're doing a test right now in Chicago for a gum client where it's an at-home test where you actually can get samples of a bunch of new brands that they're thinking about coming out with. You taste the product. You then, through your text on your mobile, text which one your favorite one is. And then based on that, the client is eventually going to come out with a new brand. So that's how they're using that. For Jack in the Box, we've used, both social and mobile with coupons in proximity to the outlets, which seem to have been very successful. It is a territory that is going to take collaboration because technology is what is going to drive innovation in that arena. So it's here, it's getting bigger, it's getting larger, and again, it goes back to the consumer behavioral research that mobile is important to them. And if mobile's important to them, you have to figure out how to use it.
Okay, let's move to, this is a question from the audience, a specific one. How do we evaluate the effective frequency of digital place-based media? Meaning, if you think about the rules of effective frequency that many of us grew up with, right? You try to expose somebody to 3 exposures of an ad, and we could argue we've reached effective exposure. Any comments? Again, I'll start with you, David, if you don't mind, as the out-of-home specialist. What can you give the audience any advice about effective frequency? At what point does Kinetic feel like you've seen a digital place-based ad enough to be effective exposure? Couldn't one exposure to a long-form digital place-based unit be effective frequency?
No, I think, again, it comes down to the advertiser, doesn't it? I mean, effective frequency is different for every single media channel, depending on the parameters of the brief for the advertiser. So, I mean, again, that's a very difficult question to answer. But I mean, I would say that you have to view it as you are looking at a number of discrete environments. So your OTS is going to be lower. Just because you're not in a broadcast environment unless you're scaling up. So if you're in one narrowcast environment in a healthcare practice, then you're only likely to get 2 or 3 OTRs because you're not, unless you're very sick, you're going to be going back and forth from the doctor's office very often. If you are targeting a New York taxi cab, then you would be viewing it in very similar lines, I think, to other media channels. So I just think, again, it's horses for courses.
For a direct marketer, you're learning about effective frequency in real time because you're getting some action that is required, and it's telling you whether your effective frequency is working. For a brand advertiser right now, the first thing that we need is that common currency. And once you get that common currency, then you're able to determine what your effective frequency levels might or might not be, and we're not there yet.
Let's go back. I said we'd kind of come back to this central question, which is how do you get into your companies in the most efficient way, both for you, because time is very precious for your organization, and these folks want to call on people that actually can help make a decision. I think in some cases people would appreciate a fast no more than a slow yes, although a slow no is the worst possible thing for many of these people out here, right? Slow yes, that's pretty good, but slow no is terrible. Fast no actually is not a bad thing. Talk a little bit about how you budget, right? How do you, at your place, I think there's a feeling in this audience that at times digital place-based advertising kind of gets the leftovers, right? It's whatever money is left from that TV budget. It's whatever money is left kind of at the end of budget planning. That's what you know, that's what digital place-based advertising gets. I think many of the people in this audience have called on agencies where the answer is, you know, there's no budget for your idea, and of course they go home frustrated by saying, well, of course there's no budget for my idea. It's never been done before, or it's a brand new delivery system. So talk a little bit, I'll start with you, Steve. How do you budget at Targetcast TCM, and how do you avoid the feeling that these folks only get the leftovers from your national television budget?
Okay, let's kind of put it in perspective, because this is really important, right? So we live, you know, and work in an environment where TV still is the dominant, for most brands, you know, the dominant medium. And this year we had a very strong, or let's say they had a very strong upfront, right? Higher cost for doing business, therefore sucking up most of the money, or more of the money than they did last year, number one. Number two, a bad economy. Very few brands have a higher budget for 2012 than they have for 2011. It's just not going to happen. The business this isn't there, right? So we're looking at an environment where a lot of money is stuck in the upfront. A lot of the other money, by the way, there's this huge kind of magnet on the other side with the digital market, right? We talked about digital, we talked about display. Next year, digital video is going to be big. Social is going to be big. There's this big sucking sound, and that's the rest of the money just going into, you know, going into the internet. You guys have to come with a huge catcher's mitt, you know, and get right in the middle of that money that's going into the internet, and try to persuade us that there is a better reason we're going to be more successful if our money is invested in digital place-based media. And I would say that the mistake that a lot of salespeople make, and this is an old mistake, is in the first meeting trying to sell something, right? And you can probably say that about every salesperson, you know, selling anything. The first meeting is really about, what's your strategy? What are you trying to do? Who's your target? How did it work last year? And what can I do to help you succeed? If you have a meeting like that, you only need one more meeting. Because in that next meeting, when you come back with a proposal, you're going to get a yes, you're going to get a no, and you might get, hey, what about this? But don't come in trying to sell something on the first communication. Come in trying to understand what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, first of all, contrary to what Steve said, we represent about 100 clients, and we're actually seeing an uptick in budgets for next year. And that's an aggregate of about 100 clients across the board. But one of the, you know, Dave, you said, how do you know you're not just getting sloppy leftovers? It goes back to a couple of things. One is scale. Scale is still very important for a lot of major advertisers. So my suggestion is, and we go back to this tool that we use that tells us what media channels are relevant for our clients, and that's what drives our budget decisions. Our budget decisions are not driven by, you know which way the wind is blown, and we think television is great. It's driven by what our consumers and potential customers are telling us are important to them. So any research you have on your own that can help quantify that, that's really, really important. And any testable propositions, a lot of this new media you have to test and learn. Any testable propositions you have are important, but know the brand that you're coming in to talk about. A lot of people come in and think it's a one-size-fits-all solution. You've got to custom it more to a particular brand or category when you're coming in and talking about a new opportunity.
Let's get into another area of frustration, I think, in some areas of the industry and audience today, which is that we talked a little bit about place-based, digital place-based networks straddling and balancing between, they have television-like qualities, they've got mobile qualities, and they've got out-of-home qualities. And in this case, the digital place-based networks can at times be measured by interaction rate. Is that fair to hold digital place-based, to measure digital place-based media by interaction rate when a traditional television network is not judged anywhere near that? I think, talk a little bit, Steve, I'm going to start with you. You were very honest by saying we still live in a world where traditional television gets the lion's share of the business. This has been a lament. I've been doing this for 33 years. I think you've been doing it about the same amount of time. You've heard this lament a long time, right? Why are the television networks held to such a lower standard in terms of the data they provide, and yet, you know, a digital place-based network may be measured more by its mobile interaction or another metric and not held to the same standard of television.
Okay,
is that fair, or do we just need to get used to it?
No, I don't think it's fair. But again, I think in this business, there are just so many different kind of networks, right, represented in this room, that I would say generally, we're really not looking for an interaction rate, right? As I've been saying before, what we find valuable in what you're selling is mostly the environment and our ability to contour that message. So I'm not looking for an interaction rate in those environments. I am looking for people paying attention, right? People really noticing that. What drives what we do at our company is this thing that we call an aperture moment, when people are open to getting the message. Okay, so if in our studies we have identified that environment as the right environment for an aperture moment, and then we would go for it. So I'm not looking for interaction. I am looking for people paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I said it a few minutes ago. I think interaction is an opportunity. It shouldn't be the definition of the industry. I think, you know, one of the guys said you've got to have a common currency that unifies the majority of this sector. I mean, so that you can then start thinking about what the measurement metrics are. But you know, it's such a diverse sector that there's going to be nuances by individual media owner and environment.
Yeah, and Dave, the television and cable industry are not getting a free ride anymore. They are being held more and more accountable to engagement metrics. We're asking them for some specific research that talks about the quality of their audience. So they're not getting a free ride, and a day of reckoning is coming as we get more and more into behavioral targeting. And you know that they are losing more and more slices of the pie. You know, they did well in the upfront this year, but for all the wrong reasons, all for wrong reasons. And that goes back to my feeling that the model at the holding companies are broken. These guys all come to the table at once. They all rush to judgment. They're all like sheep. They all follow each other. And for the wrong reason, an awful lot of money was spent, not necessarily very smartly. And you talked, David, about before, a quick no is better sometimes than a long no. You know, a quick no for the wrong reasons is not good. And I think that there is a knowledge gap within the media industry right now in terms of some of the people that you're talking to probably don't have an understanding, and you're talking to junior people. And we, for the first time, we did this a year ago. We did an entire agency, 700 people. We did a knowledge test across the entire agency on digital knowledge across every digital platform. I'm talking about our local radio buyers, our TV buyers, our out-of-home people, our digital people, our social people, the receptionist. We did it across the board with everybody to get a baseline as to where our agency is in the digital world. And that we did that in order to bring up that knowledge gap and make the entire agency completely digital-centric, because digital is not a channel anymore. It is a way of life, and that's where the new agency of the future is going to be. Very good.
One question from the audience I thought I would just get quickly. Let's not dwell too much on this, but it's another process question, but interesting. This person, I'll paraphrase, asked a question about some frustration when their folks are asked for proposals, RFPs or RFIs from your organizations, and then they don't get a response back, right? So there's a request for a lot of information. Folks out here struggle to pull together an RFP or an RFI. They work really hard about it, and then it seems to go into a black hole and nothing seems to come back. Doesn't happen all the time, but I think we would all admit it happens more often than perhaps we would like it to. A comment. Let's start with you, David. What advice can you give for folks that are frustrated a bit with the process?
I have every sympathy with that. We've been on the receiving end of that, and I am absolutely certain that I'm afraid that we've probably been one of the guilty parties in that respect. I mean, and I'm sure the guys would agree with me. I mean, going back to Bill's earlier comment, if that's the case within my business, come to me. But I mean, I think it comes back to learning to say no. A colleague and I were talking yesterday about how we make our business and our response to briefs more efficient, and we have our wheels spun a lot. We have to learn to say no, and we have to judge the right briefs and the wrong briefs, and you can see, I think you can begin to identify the repeat offenders, and then you have to tackle it on an individual basis would be my straight advice on that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to culture of the agency, and I'll bet you that it is happening probably at least 50% of the time. Just based on what I'm hearing, I'm not necessarily, don't know if it's happening in my backyard 50% of the time, but I bet it is happening a lot. And we, at the end of November, are producing a reach out to all of the media vendors that we deal with to get a satisfaction survey so that we know how our people are reacting to what's going on out there. And it is not to be used as a negative reinforcement for our people, but it's to be used to make sure that people have open access to the agency. And if they don't, we have to fix that. It's a culture thing.
Let's go back to a lightning round here and learn a little bit more about each of you. Starting with you, Bill. What time do you get in the office? What time do you get into the office every day?
About 8.
Steve,
8
what time do you get into the office?
7:59.
David, what time do you get into the office?
I'm about 7:30.
Bill, how many? I think you said already. How many clients do you have?
We have about 100.
Steve, how many clients do you have?
About 24.
David, how many clients do you have?
I have to answer that in two ways. Through my group owned business and my other affiliate partners, we have over 600. And then through direct agency appointments, direct client appointments, we have 7.
Wow. David, how many employees do you have?
140.
Steve, how many employees do you have?
100.
Bill, how many employees do you have?
We have 700. Just wait a second. Did you say you had 600 clients with 140 employees?
Yeah, I mean, then
Well, the budget.
Your margins must be enormous.
That's no problem.
Enormous.
I'll tell you about that another time.
We have about 700 employees.
Let's go learn a little bit more about each of you. I'll start with you, Bill. Do you have a motto? What's your motto?
Motto is business is personal. That if you don't get emotionally invested in your clients' brands and emotionally invested in your people and the people that you work with, you're just not going to make that connection. We also have a mantra of making our clients feel like new clients every day of the week. And I'm not talking about the new clients that we've picked up. I'm talking about clients that have been with us 10 and 20 years. If we are not constantly reinventing for them, they're going to feel not loved. So we constantly feel that we've got to bring innovation to them.
Steve, what's your motto?
My motto is a lot shorter than your motto. You got a very deep motto. And I never thought I had a motto, but if you're going to ask me that question, it's probably do something. I want to see people move. I want to see people come up with ideas. I don't mind if they fail. I want to see them do something.
David, what's your motto?
Door is open, and not just to people within the business, my business, but in terms of media owners and to ideas and opportunity.
Bill, when and where are you happiest?
When I pick up the telephone and the client says, "We've awarded you our business," that's a good one. But I enjoy sitting on the beach, just looking at the ocean, not having anything else around me. I enjoy that.
Steve, when and where are you happiest?
Well, I liked his first answer, so I'll take his first answer as my first answer as well. But I like playing music. I play my guitar. I got my little band. Where's my singer sitting out there?
David, when and where are you happiest?
Right now, at this time of year, it's the soccer season, and it's watching my daughter's team win the League and Cup double.
And then let's go, I'll keep going back to you, Bill. Bill, if you could go out and meet any historical figure, who would it be? If you could have lunch with a historical figure, who would it be?
Wow. God, any historical figure.
Come back to you. It's Steve. Historical figure you'd most enjoy having lunch with.
Yeah. Almost any of the explorers, all those guys that left Europe in the 1500s got on a boat and I don't think they had any computers, right? and explored.
So you want to meet Vasco da Gama?
Huh?
Vasco da Gama or
one of those
Magellan
guys,
or something.
Magellan or Christopher Columbus, I don't know. Those guys were brave and visionaries. Absolutely.
David, what historical figure would you most like to have lunch with?
I'm going to show my roots here. There's a British politician called Tony Benn, who was a peer of the realm.
Tony Bennett?
Tony Benn.
Oh, Tony Benn.
Not Tony Bennett, no. He was a peer of the realm, and he gave up everything for what he believed in. He was a socialist, and he gave up his peerage and his knighthood to pursue his passion of socialist politics. And he's still alive, and he's an amazing guy.
Bill, back to you. Historical figure.
Yeah, I'd probably have to say modern day. I would love to have lunch with Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that would be something.
Yep.
We only have a couple of minutes left. Let's go to kind of a closing question, and I'll start with you, Steve. What do you think Targetcast TCM will look like? Let's not get too far in the head. I think when I briefed you on this, I asked you for 10 years in the future, but could you just give us a view? What is Targetcast TCM going to look like 2 years from today, and give us a sense of the vision and the structure of the company 2 years from today?
So I actually prepared a different answer, but I can answer that one too. Look, I think Targetcast is a young and growing company. In 2 years, we'd like to be twice our size, but we want to be just as integrated. We think that in such a fragmented world, I mean, we have to deal with, think about how many of your kind of businesses we have to deal with. Think about every kind of other media we have to deal with. We don't believe, and we know it works for other companies, but we don't believe in isolation. We like to have our groups integrated. So we want to get twice as big. We want to remain integrated. That's us.
Let's go to you, David. What's Kinetic going to look like 2 years from today, and how are you going to be operating 2 years from today? Paint us some kind of a visual picture of the Kinetic of 2013.
We're making a transition. You know, as I said right at the beginning, that we view our business as a much broader church than the outdoor sector. So we're making a transition to being this specialist entity within the media channel, lifestyle and environment I talked about. We will be a professional services business that is focused on providing solutions to our clients. So therefore, we will be working across a much broader platform of media channels, I believe. You know, out of home, they will be related to the consumer when they're away from their home, but they won't be. They'll be a broader church than the ones that we're talking about specifically today.
And Bill, you know, I'd be interested in your view 2 years from today. In particular, you're one of the fastest growing, and you've become a really big agency. You know, we had Nancy talk about Jay Chiat, right? One of Jay Chiat's great lines was the question of, when asked what he wanted to do with his agency, he said, "I want to find out how big we can get before we get bad." You know, you've grown so much. What do you want Horizon to look like 2 years from today? And can you continue to get so big without getting bad?
Yeah, I think you can if you constantly try to reinvent yourself. You cannot think you've ever arrived, because once you think you've arrived, the train's going to leave without you. But the train that's moving down the road is threefold. One, the entire agency is going to become digital centric. I talked about this digital CAT scan we gave the entire agency, and down the road, you won't have these digital silos. The entire agency is going to think digital because we have to. Two, from an activation standpoint, we're moving more and more towards cross-platform on behavioral clusters. No longer against, you know, age and demographic, but across behavioral clusters, and we're moving more and more in that arena. The third is the socialization of the world that we're living in, and social insights is going to become a huge part of our practice. And the fourth is leading creative development. We are starting to lead more and more creative development for our clients in the digital world because of understanding how consumers behave and understanding how brands want to behave. And those insights are coming through the media agencies now. So I think we're going to become a lot more creative-centric as well.
I think I'm looking over to the team. 2 more minutes. Okay, we have time for maybe one last question. You know, one of the things we didn't address today is we have a number of clients in the audience here today, and we have a number of agencies in the audience today. We talked a lot about the network owners and the network sales folks. Let's talk for just a moment as we close. What advice would you give the clients in this room? What advice would you give the clients in this room about considering digital place-based media? What advice? Where does it fit in the pantheon of media alternatives? I'll start with you, Steve. Give some advice to the clients, and I guess if you don't mind, I'll let you close by also talking a little bit about what should they look for an agency in this space. Okay. Should they get a specialist agency to help them with this, or how do they manage it? So talk to the clients in the room for a moment.
Okay, so I guess more than one way to skin a cat here, but finding out where digital place-based fits in your brand's strategy is really a question for the consumer. right? So I think Bill mentioned a tool that they have. A tool that we have is called Target Track, and what we look for is that aperture moment. So we're really asking the consumer, where are the high value touch points? When are you open to getting a message? And when we see that happen, that's when we come to this marketplace and we make that happen. And what I would say, in looking for an agency in this area, again, we believe in integration. We believe that digital place-based media really cannot be focused on in and of itself. It's got to be looked at with every other kind of media together. So I think an agency that is integrated and understands its role in your brand strategy is the best.
David Payne, I'm going to let you answer it, and then we'll close with Bill. Talk to the clients in this room. Where does digital place-based fit in the pantheon of media, and what kind of an agency should they use to manage this?
Well, we're of the view that you need a specialist agency in this space, one that looks at, as we believe, that looks at the broader channel of people when they're away from the home, the consumer engagement when they're away from the home. So place-based digital is just one part of that, and it can be an integrated part of that. And because it's so diverse and there are so many verticals within the sector now, you have to have the expertise and the understanding and the opportunity to look at it from that different perspective. So we would say you need to look at a specialist channel. And from within that, you can then start to work with the media owner partners to build the right kind of solutions for clients.
And Bill Koenigsberg, you get the last word. What advice can you give to the clients in this room about digital place-based advertising, and talk a little bit about the agency, what they should be looking for in an agency to help them manage in this space?
Sure. Well, first of all, this is a game of inches, and for the clients out there, failure is not an option. You do not have an option to fail. But what you need to do is, there's not one client I've ever met that hasn't said to me, or what we say to them is, we want our competitors out there to say, hey, why didn't we do that? Why did this brand do that and our brand didn't do that? So you have to take calculated risks that are research-based. And then the new frontier that we're in right now, if you don't move the line forward in a calculated way, you're going to get left behind, and you have to experiment. So from a client perspective, you have to take calculated risks. Failure is not an option, so make sure that you have a media agency that is steeped in research and strategy and backed by good business case as to why you should do something, and put an awful lot of pressure on your media partners out here to become partners in what you're doing, and have them have a vested interest, and not just take an order and get a budget, but have a vested interest in terms of what the outcome is. It's all about collaboration.